Welcome to Capital Catch-Up. Today we are diving deep into the latest legislative actions, nominations, and the daily proceedings on Capitol Hill. Let us start with a bill that could change the loose change in your pocket, House Resolution 3074, also known as the Common Sense Act.
Yes, Victor. This bill proposes something many Americans have debated for years, which is eliminating the 1-cent coin from general circulation. The Treasury would stop minting pennies to reduce production costs, though they would remain legal tender and still be made for numismatic collectors. Under this bill, cash transactions would be rounded to the nearest 5 cents, and the Treasury would be authorized to adjust the metal composition of the 5-cent coin to make it more cost-efficient.
It is all about modernizing our currency system. Speaking of coins, there is also Senate Bill 2265, the America's Olympic and Paralympic Games Commemorative Coins Act. This would direct the Secretary of the Treasury to mint gold, silver, and clad coins celebrating the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Los Angeles, as well as the 2034 Winter Games in Salt Lake City. The interesting part is that this program must run at no net cost to the federal government. Surcharges collected from coin sales will go directly to the respective organizing committees to support the games, legacy programs, and youth and elite sports.
That is a great way to support our athletes and host cities. Now, let us shift to something that affects our daily schedules: time itself. House Resolution 139, the Sunshine Protection Act of 2025, wants to make daylight saving time the permanent, year-round standard time across the nation. It would repeal the temporary period provisions of the Uniform Time Act of 1966 and amend the Calder Act, effectively ending the twice-a-year practice of changing our clocks.
I think a lot of people would welcome not having to change their clocks. Though the bill does include provisions to allow states and specific areas that have previously exempted themselves from daylight saving time to keep their current standard time or transition to the permanent schedule. It is a big push for simplicity.
Let us look at healthcare, specifically Senate Bill 864, the HELP Copays Act. This bill targets out-of-pocket costs by requiring health insurance plans to count third-party financial assistance, like support from nonprofit organizations or prescription drug manufacturers, toward a patient's annual deductibles and out-of-pocket limits.
That could be a massive financial relief for patients who rely on expensive specialty medications. Currently, some plans do not count that assistance toward the patient's deductible, leaving them with high bills once the assistance runs out. The bill achieves this by amending the Public Health Service Act, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and the Internal Revenue Code, while still allowing standard insurance tools like prior authorization.
Another major support bill is Senate Bill 2120, the Older Americans Act Reauthorization Act of 2025. This extends and updates federal programs for older citizens through fiscal year 2030. It focuses on improving mental health and substance use disorder services, enhancing nutrition programs with grab-and-go and medically tailored meals, and expanding support for family caregivers and the direct care workforce. It also aims to tackle social isolation through broadband coordination and strengthens protections for Native elders and those in long-term care facilities.
It really shows a comprehensive effort to help our aging population maintain independence. Now, let us pivot to public lands and resources, where we have several significant bills. First, House Resolution 655, the Dallas Watershed Development Act. This authorizes the Secretary of Agriculture to convey about 150 acres of land in Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest to the City of the Dalles for municipal water supply and development needs. The city has to cover all administrative and survey costs, and if they do not use the land for public purposes, it goes back to the federal government. It has passed the House and is now in the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources.
And in Colorado, we have Senate Bill 1791, the Gunnison Outdoor Resources Protection Act of 2025. Introduced by Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper, it designates federal lands in Gunnison County as special management, wildlife conservation, protection, and recreation areas. It is designed to balance ecological preservation, like protecting wildlife habitats, with recreational activities like off-highway and over-snow vehicle use.
Balancing conservation and recreation is always tricky, but this bill mandates winter travel management plans to help manage that. On the energy side, House Resolution 1687, the Clean Act, aims to speed up geothermal energy development. It amends the Geothermal Steam Act of 1970 to mandate annual lease sales and set strict deadlines for the Department of the Interior to process drilling permits on federal lands.
To complement that domestic energy push, we also have House Resolution 4090, the Critical Mineral Dominance Act. This bill is designed to secure domestic supply chains and reduce reliance on foreign adversaries for hard rock minerals. It requires the Secretary of the Interior to expedite priority mining projects, conduct economic analyses of our mineral import reliance, and accelerate geologic mapping. It also directs the government to review and rescind regulations deemed unduly burdensome to mining operations.
This ties into a broader conversation about national security and infrastructure. Look at Senate Bill 1541, the Ships for America Act of 2025. This is a major effort to revitalize the domestic maritime industry, shipyards, and workforce. Lawmakers are concerned about our shrinking commercial fleet and reliance on foreign shipping, especially compared to China's rapid maritime expansion. The bill proposes increased federal oversight, financial incentives for shipyards, and expanded educational pathways for merchant mariners.
National security also extends to domestic crime. Senate Bill 1404, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, addresses the rise in organized retail and cargo theft. It would establish an organized retail and supply chain crime coordination center within the Department of Homeland Security to help federal, state, and local law enforcement share information and coordinate investigations against these cross-jurisdictional theft rings.
And speaking of retail, House Resolution 1181, the Protecting Privacy in Purchases Act, focuses on consumer privacy. It prohibits payment networks and financial entities from using specific merchant category codes that uniquely identify firearms retailers, forcing them to use general merchandise or sporting goods codes instead. The Attorney General would enforce this, and it explicitly preempts any state laws that try to mandate firearm-specific codes.
Let us not forget Senate Bill 1547, the America the Beautiful Act, which reauthorizes the National Parks and Public Land Legacy Restoration Fund from fiscal years 2027 through 2031. It aims to tackle the deferred maintenance backlog on federal lands, but with strict new rules. It prohibits using these funds for land acquisition, employee bonuses, or decommissioning roads, and institutes a no-list, no-allocation policy to ensure transparency.
It is good to see a focus on maintaining what we already have. On the defense and global security front, Senate Resolution 323 calls on the United States to lead global efforts to halt and reverse the nuclear arms race. It highlights the dangers of the world's 12,000 nuclear weapons and urges the president to engage in arms control talks with Russia and China, while also calling for domestic policy shifts like ending hair-trigger launch postures and restricting the president's sole authority to launch nuclear strikes.
Finally, we have Senate Bill 142, the Wildland Firefighters Congressional Gold Medal Act. This honors our wildland firefighters with a Congressional Gold Medal to be displayed at the National Interagency Fire Center, recognizing their sacrifice and resilience in protecting our communities from increasingly intense wildfires.
Let us quickly touch on recent nominations. We have Brett Doyle of Connecticut and David Foley, Jr. of Virginia, both nominated to be members of the United States International Trade Commission. We also have Juan Rodriguez of Florida, nominated to be the ambassador to the Republic of Guatemala.
Moving to the Congressional Daily Records, the House proceedings from July 13, 2026, were largely ceremonial and reflective. Members delivered tributes to the late Senator Lindsey Graham and Louisiana State Senator Larry C. Selders. They also recognized retiring staff members McLean Piner and Jamie Robinette, and celebrated local milestones like the centennials of the Williamsburg Volunteer Fire Department, the Smithfield Volunteer Fire Company, and Agatuchis Restaurant in Peoria, Illinois, along with state baseball titles for Bermudian Springs and Greencastle Antrim High Schools.
The next day, July 14, 2026, the tone was much more policy-driven. There was a sharp debate over immigration enforcement, with members clashing over border security versus the conduct of federal agents and the protection of immigrant communities. They also marked the 70th anniversary of the Federal Aid Highway Act, discussed new tax credits to address the affordable housing crisis, called for continued support for Ukraine, and advocated for blood donations.
As we look ahead, listeners should watch out for how the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources handles the land conveyance for the Dallas and Oregon, and whether the Banking Committee moves forward on the Wildland Firefighters Congressional Gold Medal Act. We will also be watching the progress of the Sunshine Protection Act and the Common Sense Act as they make their way through the legislative process.
That is all for today's Capital Catch-Up. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.